Hello, we'll be starting at 7:05. Okay, it is 7:05, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, um, John and Nancy for joining.
Thank you. ほら、ケン君さん。
Nobody's here.
Nobody's here.
I think there's like one person on YouTube, so
Only
we'll
one
just do
person
it
on
for them.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, YouTube participant, whoever you are. All right, I'll start us off with an opening prayer. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Parents, Jesus, Hunjim, Pejim, Tomim, all our good ancestors in this world, good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us to come together today, once again to continue doing this Ocean Province Hundokya series. I really pray that as we continue, that we're able to continue to not only feel inspired and motivated by Ocean Province while we learn about it, but also really help whatever we learn to fuel us to keep going with regards to Ocean Providence and to really fulfill it in God's will. I really pray that this can be offered up as some kind of condition for True Mother and for Japan and the whole situation that's going on there. Really pray that as the situations continue going, I really pray that we're able to really focus on doing God's will and doing everything we can to lessen the burden on Japan's shoulders. Thank you so much. We pray for True Mother's safety and health and the Japanese members in Japan. Yeah, thank you. Please be with us throughout this entire call. I pray this in my name, Ju Chon, third generation member of the Central Family, attending Holy Mother Han, Amen, Aju. Okay. Right. So today, John and Nimiko-san, you guys know this presentation pretty well because I think John made it. But so for our YouTube participants, thank you so much for joining. We are continuing today's presentation from Sunguk, don't shake the table. We are going to be continuing today's presentation. This is part 2 of an intro to the providential context of Ocean Providence. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the importance of North and South American unification. And today we are going to be talking about what exactly that course toward world unification is going to entail. And so some key points from last time. First, Ocean Providence's goal is to solve world hunger and therefore other physical problems. To achieve unity, we must unite North and South America, which would equate to the unity of the Christian cultural realm between Protestantism, Abel, and Catholicism, which is Cain. And then the unity of Christianity will then lead to the unity of other religions, ideologies, and ultimately allow for the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. And the method for this unity would have been to live for the sake of others. And this is why we see true parents had made this huge move from North America to South America, beginning the second 40-year course, of which the members had central responsibility for. So that's kind of just like a very basic summary of what we had gone over last time. Now, so North America, the Able, was meant to live for the sake of South America, Cain. And this was the reason why true parents brought everything down from North America to South America. Essentially, it was for the North and South American unification. And after the North and South American unification, the question becomes, how do we actually unite the world after that, right? True Father says that after we unite North and South America, suddenly we'll be able to unite everything else. But how do we actually do that? The key is actually the Pantanal as well as Ocean Providence. So that's what we will be talking about today. So the question is, what method do we actually unify the world with? And True Father says, the oceans can become a central point for bringing the world together. I believe that this will be a shortcut to guiding all people toward a world of peace. That is why for several decades, I have been researching, planning, and pioneering all sorts of ocean-related businesses. This is the fastest way to bring people and nations together. I'm always thinking how this can be done, and that is why I am making a foundation on the ocean. When we make this foundation, our direction towards the future will be straight. So we can see here clearly the ocean is very key to this method toward unification. And another thing that's very important is the Pantanal. And the Pantanal is in South America. It's the world's largest wetlands. And because the land is periodically flooded with water, not many people live in this area. So it's very largely untouched nature, natural, and very, very beautiful. And the location is mostly inside the Brazilian border, but small parts of it are in Bolivia and Paraguay, as you can see. And it's essentially, this treasure trove of fauna and flora. Now, this here showcases, kind of, building an ideal village in South America, which was, very key in Pantanal province that parents were trying to do. And you can see that there were many things that was going on in South America, right? The province essentially was very active down there. So you see in Puerto Leda, since August 1st, 1999, many Japanese national messiahs were assigned here to pioneer and construct an ideal village. And there were activities happening in Puerto Olimpo, Puerto Martino, and in Navileque. There was the Cosmic Liberation Ceremony performed May 14th, 1999, and it was also consecrated as the original holy ground, the root holy ground, and the victory holy ground, also in 1999, July 27th. And in Salobra, this location held a farm and a hotel purchased by True Father in 1996, and True Father had actually resided here when Satan had surrendered on March 21st, 1999. And also Jardim, many people know about, is also a place where there were many Jardim declarations, and it's a farm where many blessed families around the world were trained. And so you can see there is a lot going on in the Pantanal province in South America in this specific region. And here, you might kind of wonder, like, why, right? What is the point of being in that specific location? And True Father, of course, explained, right? He says, Pantanal and the Jardim is, the place where the spiritual world and the physical world can unite, which is very key. He says, in the future, Salobra, the Pantanal and Jardim, where I made the proclamations that united the spiritual world and the physical world, will become scenic destinations for tourists from around the world. There are places where the water and the land meet. This is where we are determining all matters related to water and land as a basis for continuing on our path. And so Pantanal and Jardim is where the vertical and horizontal aspects of God's providence can meet. And here is just further showcasing the spiritual and this historical providence that was happening in the Pantanal. And in on May 15th, 1998, for example, there was the proclamation of the liberation of hell, right? That's a huge thing, right? In the spiritual providence, the liberating of hell, happening in Nabileke. March 21st, 1999, Satan actually, naturally surrendered in Solobra. That's also insane, right? Satan surrendered. And then May 14th, 1999, there was the Declaration of Cosmic Liberation in Nabileke. June 14th, 1999, there was the Declaration of True Parents' Cosmic Victory in Seoul. And then on July 27th, 1999, there was the consecration of the original holy ground, the root holy ground, and victory holy ground in Nabileke. So that's very important holy ground, right? The original holy ground. On August 1st, 1999, following the consecration of the holy ground, true parents gathered the Japanese national messiahs to Nabileke and began a special workshop to begin the LETA project. The substantial creation of this ideal nation was meant to begin at that point. And so you can see this spiritual course where so many spiritual events happened and these various declarations, and all of it led up to this point of starting this creation of the ideal nation. And so what was the Pantanal meant to be the starting point of? True Father says, what do we mean by original when we say that this Nabileke is the original holy ground? It is the starting point. It is the start point centering on the ideals of creation. And then what? Next is root. From then, the path will not be the province of restoration, but it is at the level where the ideals of creation can begin centering on a new beginning. There I will bring a new beginning for God and for the realization of the providential will and the ideal of creation that has been his hope. Also, I am determined that the Pantanal will become the starting point and base for the new kingdom of heaven and on earth, which will welcome the era of the perfected fourth Adam. And so there's this idea of building this ideal village in South America. He says, I'm saying, let us establish the kingdom of heaven in South America. Let us establish the kingdom of heaven on earth. There is an abundance of land that can feed and accommodate all the people of the world. This land must be liberated. I want to solve the food shortage problem and other difficult problems faced by humanity. And this land that he's referencing is this place in South America. And, even True Mother talks about this, right? She says, and talks about the goals in Pantanal. And she says, in the mid-1990s, with serious hearts, Father Moon and I traveled to the Pantanal region. The Pantanal is a vast wetland straddling the borders of Paraguay and Brazil. It is located precisely on the opposite side of the globe from our home country, that is Korea. There, we worked hand in hand with farmers and fishermen. Putting an end to food shortages begins by getting your hands dirty. And she continues to talk about these practical projects and these various initiatives in South America. She says stable food sources and pure air, land, and water are essential to world peace and the salvation of humankind. Not confining ourselves to theoretical explanations, we devoted significant resources to practical projects in the real world. For half a century, Latin America was a major site for this investment of true love and human resources. We launched various initiatives in the Pantanal region, and we have carried out countless other projects for the sake of humankind over the past 60 years. So many people kind of think that Ocean Providence was something True Father largely did, but True Mother also was very involved. And so, yeah, True Mother also has many words regarding to this. Now, so you can see, right, just from those words, but also kind of this map that showcases these different efforts in the Pantanal region alone, there were various initiatives done there, as True Mother said, right? All these different locations are these huge sites for these various providential efforts being done in South America, but it's all in this Pantanal area. And True Parents had invested in a lot of things centered on Pantanal, Uruguay, and the Paraguay River. For example, agriculture, fish farming, fish powder, schools, tourism, banks, commercial fishing boats, all these different things. And True Parents essentially wanted to create a system in South America that could solve the global food shortage problem. It was meant to be this system to solve world hunger. And so True Father describes the Pantanal as the original root and victorious original ground, holy ground. the ideal village, the ideal city, the base, the starting point of heaven, the ideal nation, the kingdom of heaven, all these different epic titles, right? The new beginning for God, the starting point of ideals of creation. All of this was to showcase and illustrate, this place was to become a system where blessed families can live substantially for the sake of the world and solve things like the global food shortage problem. Now, in order to save the 800 million people who are lacking food globally in this world, right, and create an ideal world, the Pantanal Providence is the starting point, but it is not enough by itself, right? The Pantanal Providence was meant to serve as a model that could then be replicated globally through Ocean Providence. And so we're going to be talking about the global expansion of the Pantanal Providence as Ocean Providence. And True Father says, I'm planning to build ideal cities and villages in several places around the world. We will create communities in which people produce, work, and help each other economically. The atmosphere in these communities will be different from that in the world at large. Our main goal is not money. With the money we generate from these businesses, unificationists will carry out their responsibilities in service to God and humankind. And True Mother talks about the New Hope Farm in relation to this kind of idea of creating an ideal village and model base. She says this speech was given at a Korean General Assembly of the Youth Federation for World Peace on August 20th, 1995. And she says the current crises of humanity and environmental pollution resulting from problems such as the spread of sexual immorality, greed, starvation, poverty, and misguided applications of science have reached a stage where we no longer can turn a blind eye toward them. As a means of overcoming such crises, we are cultivating vast areas of land under the name New Hope Farm to create a model of an ideal society and ideal nation. This land, totaling more than 1 million acres, lies in South America, including parts of Brazil and Argentina. And she also talks about the expansion of this model. And this speech was given at a Korean General Assembly of the Youth Federation. Also, she says, what we then can expand this model of an ideal society to the rest of the world. In my opinion, this movement is the most important enterprise that our YFWP members need to promote as they stand in the central position. It is also the hope of God and the dream of the founder that the substantial ideal society that YFWP is aiming for. So she makes it very clear that this movement for this ideal society and the expansion of it is the most important enterprise that our, YFWP, the youth, need to promote as they stand in the central position. And so kind of to give a visual of this, right, our goal is to essentially build this network of food production, distribution, and education to permanently eradicate the world hunger problem. So each maritime base, all across the world, it would be located along coasts or rivers, and it would be a collection of businesses centered on an ocean church. And it would be a center for food generation, distribution, education, and self-sufficiency, and the culture and, developing this culture of living for the sake of others, which is God's ideology, God's culture. And each base will be connected to this global network throughout the world that will work like capillary vessels that will send nutrients to every part of humanity that needs it. And it is a place where blessed families can live this hobby lifestyle while working toward a substantial solution to social problems such as hunger. We will first create, and the first model base that was to be created was to start in South America and then be expanded throughout the rest of the world to create this huge network. And so for the unification of the world, right, first, we talked about North America, the able, had to live for the sake of South America, the Cain, to achieve the unification of North and South America. And then the united North and South America, which would then become the united Christian cultural realm, the united, at that point, the able to the rest of the world, would have to live for the sake of the rest of the world through the Pantanal and the Ocean Providence, starting that ideal village and spreading that model to the rest of the world. And so to answer the question of what the Pantanal is a preparation for, right, your father says in order to return to the ocean, we need to take interest in the fisheries business. To prepare for this, we plan to settle in the Pantanal with Lada at the center and carry out this work through the Japanese people. It was essentially this preparation for bigger global ocean providence. He says, I made the original Holy Ground centering on the border of Paraguay and Brazil because I believe it is the closest place to return to Eden. I felt how sorrowful the heaven is and how pitiful God is. I felt the need to erase any sign of God's sorrow and have gambled and accomplished the results of 20, 40 years within only 4 years. This was done in order to see the completion by ocean providence. We will then enter the era of the Pacific Rim. So he says, right, this, all of these things that he's done, 40 years of work within 4 years, was to see the completion by ocean providence. And then he also talks about this, right? Entering the era of the Pacific Rim. Essentially, all of this was this preparation for ocean providence and the era of the Pacific Rim. So what exactly is this Pacific Rim, right? Well, there's this thing called Pacific Rim providence, and that's basically centering on Korea, Japan, and the United States. So if we look at the transition of human civilizations and where God's providence was centered around throughout history, we see that first it started in these river civilizations, for example, the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, places like that. And then it went on to the Middle East, the Mediterranean civilization. Then it went to the Atlantic civilization, centering around, these Western European countries and, the eastern coast of the Americas. And then, obviously, the logical next place that God's providence would go to is the Pacific civilization in this location here, including Korea, Japan, and the United States. And the divine principle says, next, the essences of civilizations born on the shores of rivers and seas should bear fruit in the Pacific civilization to which Korea belongs. The river civilizations, which arose on the shores of the Nile, Tigris, and Euphrates rivers, pass on their cultures to the civilizations in the vicinity of the Mediterranean Sea, Greece, Rome, Spain, and Portugal. These bequeath their fruits to the civilizations on the Atlantic Ocean, notably Great Britain and the United States. All these fruits will be harvested in the civilization of the Pacific Ocean, which links together the United States, Japan, and Korea. And so look at this transition of human civilization, right? We started with these river civilizations, then the providence was then passed on to the Mediterranean civilization. And then, eventually Jesus came, right? The first advent. And then after that, the providence, after Jesus was crucified, moved on to the Atlantic civilization. The responsibility passed on to there. And we can see, these different. So you can also see here, right? There's the island civilization, the peninsular, and the continental civilizations that are involved. So England, New England, the United States. And then True Father was born, the second advent was born. And then that's that transition into the next era, this Pacific civilization centering on the island of Japan, the peninsula of Korea, and the continent of Chungwon-Cheonju, which would eventually be the culmination of human civilization. So just as there was a Roman Empire centered on the Italian peninsula, human civilization will culminate into a continental civilization centered on the Korean peninsula in Asia, which will develop a unified global cultural sphere. And so what is the United States' role in this specific era? True Father says, the United States, Japan, and Korea, which are on heaven's side, need to unite their resources and stand in the position of the faithful son who can welcome the prodigal son, the communist world. The latter son has fallen into a materialistic hell in his search for material utopia. This is the only way we can bring Satan to surrender voluntarily. Now the way is open for Korea to lead the world as the central nation in the Pacific Rim era, with the teaching of Reverend Moon as its spiritual compass. And so True Father mentions, this prodigal son, right? That the United States has to unite and be able to welcome this prodigal son, which is the communist world. So to understand this, we'll take a look at the actual story of the prodigal son itself, right? Jesus' parable of the prodigal son. Essentially, there's a father, and he had two sons. One was a really good son. He was always listening to his father. He was always helping out at the house and doing good things, and he received the blessings of his father, right? He's Abel's position, working under his father and blessed to inherit everything. And then there's the other brother, right? The younger brother who's in Cain's position. And he was, he essentially squandered and spent all of his wealth without returning it to his father. And when he had become poor and starving, he came back to his house, came back to his father because he had nowhere to stay, right? Now, when the younger brother came back, the dad was obviously happy, right? As a parent, his heart was overjoyed that his son was finally home. However, the older brother in this story kind of wonders, he questions, why does my father care about such an irresponsible little brother? And so, what is the issue here? The issue is that there was a difference between father's heart, which is God's heart, and the brother's heart, which is Abel's heart. Or while the father said welcome back very happily to the prodigal son because he had unconditional love, instead, the older brother, of feeling love toward his brother and joy along with his father, he felt contempt, indifference, and even jealousy. And this showcases this disunity, this difference between the heart of the father and the heart of the older son. And so the older brother who inherited the blessing despised the younger brother who had nothing. So what should happen instead? Right? Instead, the filial older brother, Abel, should love his younger brother, Cain, in place of his parents, representing heavenly parent. And so when the father says, welcome back, showing unconditional love to his prodigal son, what the older brother should do, instead of being indifferent, should instead unite with the heart of the father of that unconditional love and care for the brother in the stead of his father. And, just instead of questioning why his brother is getting all this love despite being, not a good kid, he should instead have this heart of a loving brother. He should wonder, right? I wonder how my younger brother is doing. Is he hungry? He should worry and care about his brother just as his father does, uniting with his heart. And so the practice of brotherly and sisterly love, this is the movement for the unification of North and South America, and the Maritime Hobby Industry Providence and the Pacific Rim Providence. This heart of loving and caring for one another as our siblings, instead in this uniting with our parents' heart of unconditional love. And so in the Pacific era, or in the second 40-year course, the United States, which is able, must work with Korea, the father, and Japan, the mother, to live for the sake of the Cain realm. That is the path to complete true world peace. And True Father says about true peace, right? He says the important point is concern for our neighbors. We first need to develop the heart that when we are eating enough to fill our own stomachs, we think of others who are going hungry and consider how we can help them. True peace will not come as long as humanity does not solve the problem of hunger. If the person next to me is about to die of hunger, peace is a mere luxury. In order to achieve peace, we must have the heart to be able to think about those in the world who are suffering instead of being indifferent to them. We have to have a heart of caring. Imagine, right? Imagine, as representatives of America and the Christian cultural realm, if we can bring many food and medical supplies to Africa, Gaza, Afghanistan, North Korea, all these locations, what would the world think about America and the Christianity that it represents? By having the great strength to actually truly substantially live for the sake of others, we would be able to truly hasten this unification of the world. And a further what if question, right? True Father says in the Champumugyong, people in the third world understand that I am going through hardships in order to save them. They know that for this purpose, I made a farm in Jardim, and also that I am preparing to build a fish powder factory there. People living in difficult circumstances in the third world are on my side. What if the fish powder that we supply them saves the lives of the many refugees around the world and manages to solve the food shortage problem? When that happens, I am sure that a large portion of humanity will work together with us. When True Parents' legacy will remain forever, even if the earth sinks under the sea and the heavens collapse. By so doing, I want the descendants of today's Unification Church members to be able to praise and glorify God with confidence. They will see the people of the world making pilgrimages to Jardim and appreciating it as the foundation of the great achievements we have made, and particularly of our efforts to save humanity by fish farming. Oh. And this is one more quote that I want to leave you guys with, right? True Father talks about forgetting what he does in Jardim, right? He says, that's why I forget everything. Things that we should remember in our lifetimes, I will forget everything. The date of declarations too, I will forget everything. I will forget what I did and what I did at Jardim, such as the Sao Paulo Declaration. You should remember this. Those declarations don't belong to me. I did it for you, so you must remember it. And so he makes this point, right, that we need to remember these declarations. We need to remember the responsibility of being the able and our responsibility as unification plus family members. And so just one final slide, to true parents and true family, right, for all their dedication, right? We are grateful for true parents and true family members who invested their time and efforts for the sake of lasting world peace while sacrificing so much throughout their life. We're insufficient, but we are absolutely determined to complete the clear goals and plans that you have shown us and to never forget the things that they had instilled and hoped for us to inherit. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys for listening. So for the Zoom for the Zoom members, we'll just take the next 5 minutes to kind of just reflect and think on what was presented. And for the YouTube people, thank you for joining and thank you for listening. You guys can also reflect with us. We'll be back in 5 minutes, and yeah, we'll be doing discussion. And if you guys on YouTube have any questions, please feel free to shoot it in the live stream chat. And I'll try to answer those too. So, okay, thank you. See you guys in 5 minutes. right, 5 minutes have passed, so please come back. Okay. There's only us four on the Zoom. So if anyone has any thoughts or yeah, I know you consumption, you're the one that made the presentation. So if you had any thoughts on maybe the way I presented it, you can also share that as well. And for people on YouTube, feel free to type in the chat box, and we'll get answers to you. Well, I had a thought. I think it's oh. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. John and Nancy says, thank you. You did a great job. That's good to hear. Yeah, I think the one thought I have is definitely like, yeah, like the Huntington Providence is so important, but like I don't think, yeah, like people really don't know about it. So yeah, I just wish there was a better way to like get it out there quickly. But yeah. I don't know. I think that's just like the main thought I had. It's just like it really is so important, like just reading True Father's words about it and even True Mother's words about it, and how it really was gonna be like this. It's meant to be that like starting point for something so, so big. And yet, yeah, people really don't like I don't think many people in America have even heard of it, maybe, you know? So it's kind of crazy. Yeah. How like weirdly disconnected it is. Yeah, that's my thoughts. Oma, do you have any thoughts?
Um, yeah, what you said, and also, yeah, like I guess the importance was maybe kind of like very understated, basically. And I'm like I can bet that if you ask anyone at the Clifton Church or like wherever we go, if we ask about, what do you think this was? Or, you know, did you know that like a model base or, like a model for an ideal society. We were supposed to try to build that over there, over here, like that. Most people will be like, what? What are you talking about? Probably never registered. And me either, until I kind of like got into all this and started studying it, then I'm like, oh, this is what it is. Like, you know, and actually that one particular quote that, your father was saying like, I'm going to forget. I forgot that he said that quote. And it's very interesting. Like, I'm gonna forget that I made the declaration. This and that. This was all for you, and you're the one that's supposed to remember. And then, yeah, so if I think about it, I always kind of think about this, but whenever we talk about the historical context, and we're kind of still in the middle of the second 40-year course, right? That was declared by your parents. And oh, okay, so we're still in that 40-year course too. But, they declare it, and then I guess they, you know, quote unquote, forget about it, right? And then we're the ones that are supposed to, okay, yeah, we received the message, and then um we're not gonna forget about this until we complete the whatever we're supposed to do. So, and I was actually looking at some of my father's like speeches recently, like lectures, like seminars and everything, and he was saying something like, you know True Father like directly told him like, okay, I'm telling you to do this, but then I'm not gonna mention it again. Or like something like I might even oppose you, or if you mention it, I might oppose you or something like that. So it's almost like okay, so we, hear something or we are supposed to do something and then nobody ever mentions it again, but you still have to do it, right? So there's that kind of sense. And that I don't fully understand the meaning of that quote, but I think it's a very interesting quote. Um, yeah. Yeah, I'll probably think about it a little more later. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That quote is really interesting. I think it's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like oh, no, wait. Yeah, I think the way you said it, just like how they just say the declaration and then they forget about it, but like we're meant to just like actually latch onto it and remember, I think is, yeah. Okay, yeah. And then I feel like, yeah, I don't know, maybe it has also to do with like the unity of like uniting with their heart is like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just like the idea of like we have to be able to like be self-sustaining and like know what to do even after true parents are no longer physically there to like tell us what to do.
Oh yeah, I think
Yeah.
that makes sense. So we're supposed to kind of receive the words, and even if they don't mention it or anything, we take ownership. We do our own research, repeatedly read their speech, and then try to analyze, understand it, but at the same time, kind of like, you know, become the professional in the field. Like we just have to take ownership.
Mhm.
And then yeah, so in that sense, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then John and Nancy say, yes, I feel that we can start cherishing the importance of Pantanal Providence, start to be like a water drop to influence others, start talking about it with others. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's a good way to just like starting conversations with, people about Pantanal Providence. Yeah. Yeah, I should do that more. I should bring it up in conversations with my friends. I think that would be good. Any other thoughts? Is there anything from the YouTube? I can't hear you.
I think we can finish here today.
Okay, cool. All right, then I think, yeah, we can finish. Oma, would you like to give an ending prayer for us today?
Okay, let's pray. Okay. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Parents, true parents, good morning, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever we are. Thank you that we could spend this hour kind of reminding ourselves and also rereading and restudying, re-inputting in our heads what your parents has said about the Providence, in particular the Ocean Providence and the Pantanal Providence that we talked about today. Yeah, we want to be the ones who really inherit and take ownership of the things that they've bestowed onto us, and at the same time, spread the message to as many people as possible, so that people's awareness and also understanding of what your parents have been trying to do all this time can be also be known and be spread. We want to be such vehicles and try to do that as much as possible in our daily lives. And every day we want to say that God and your parents, we did something today. We have progressed one more step, even a small step or a big step. We want to live every day like that. Um, and please don't worry, we will continue until it is completed. And thank you once again for this time. And we pray all these things in the name of, in my name, and also in attendance to Holy Mother Han. Aju.
Aju. Thank you, Ma. And thank you everybody for joining on Zoom, on YouTube, and also that one person on Facebook. Thank you. All right, we can end here. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, quick announcement. Next week is going to be Ocean Providence Connect. So we're going to be hearing from someone.
Yeah, we haven't confirmed
Yeah,
yet.
I think it's probably one of the people who did ocean challenges recently. So we'll be hearing from them and their report on how it went. So keep an eye out for announcements. Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.